11.
Okay, the November 13th, 2025 regular meeting of the Santa Monica Rent Control Board is called to order. Would the secretary please take the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Here.
Commissioner Dudek,
Here.
Commissioner Leslie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
Chair Gonska.
Here. All right, would everyone please join me in the salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And just a quick note before we get into the agenda that we'll convene into a special meeting at the conclusion of this regular meeting tonight. Does the general counsel have a report on the closed session from both from November 5th and 6th?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. The board met in closed session on November 5th and adjourned with no reportable action taken. The board met also on November 6th in closed session and adjourned after having approved the general counsel to submit an amicus brief in support of the City of Los Angeles in the case of Harris versus Los Angeles, and also approved us filing an appeal in one of a case that we're working on as well. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up is item 5, approval of the minutes. If commissioners have had an opportunity to review the minutes from our last meeting on October 9th, may I have a motion for their approval?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from
do
the
we-
last meeting. Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
All right, motion by Commissioner Dudek and seconded by Commissioner Leslie. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Embrys,
Abstain.
Commissioner Dudek,
Yes.
Commissioner Leslie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
Chair Ghanska.
Yes. All right. Agenda item 6, special agenda items. Does the executive director have anything to report to the board tonight?
Yes, Chair, thank you, and good evening. Good evening to you, Vice Chairman, and to the commissioners. The fall newsletter is on its way and will arrive in landlords and tenants' mailboxes shortly. In addition to a number of valuable updates, which I'll touch on briefly, tenants will see a large circle in the newsletter showing the maximum allowable rent, or MAR, for their unit. Landlords received MAR reports for their properties in July. If anything appears incorrect, please reach out to our office. Some tenants may notice a difference between their MAR and the rent they actually pay. As a reminder, the board adopted a regulation last month limiting increases taken to reach the MAR to no more than 10% in any 12-month period when banked general adjustments are used. More details are included in the newsletter, but if you have any concerns about a discrepancy between your rent and the MAR, please contact the agency office. The Preserving Our Diversity, or POD program, now covers eligible seniors who moved into a rent-controlled unit before 2010. The goal of the program is to help participants achieve a minimum monthly after-rent income. The newsletter includes a QR code linking directly to the program website at santamonica.gov/housing-pod. The city's REACH program, the Renters Energy and Cooling Heating Program, offers free energy-efficient electric appliances such as portable heat pump HVAC units, air purifiers, and battery storage. Tenants can scan the QR code in the newsletter to learn more about the program or to submit an application. Property owners and managers who have rent control Civics accounts can now generate detailed property reports showing the complete MAR history for each unit. If you don't yet have a Civics account, you can scan the QR code in the newsletter or visit rentcontrol.santamonica.gov and click Create a Profile at the bottom of the page. Finally, this year's Landlord-Tenant Forum will be held on Wednesday, December 10th, from 5:30 to 8 p.m. in the Martin Luther King Jr. Auditorium at the main library. The forum is jointly presented by the Consumer Protection Division of the City Attorney's Office and by Rent Control. It brings together property owners and managers, tenants, and city staff to discuss key topics with ample time for questions. Attendance is limited and requires advance registration. Register using the QR code in the newsletter or by visiting our website and clicking on the announcement on Rent Control's landing page under Related News. For those who cannot attend, the event will be recorded and posted on our website. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So next up, we have public comments. I don't believe we have any speakers tonight. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? Okay. Then we will move on to item 10, jurisdictional items. We have 3 owner occupancy exemptions and 1 single-family home exemption on the agenda tonight. Vice Chair Ivanov.
I would move that we waive hearing the staff reports and adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law for items 10A1 through 10A3.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Yes.
Commissioner Dudek,
Yes.
Commissioner Leslie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
and Chair Gonska.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, then moving on to item 10A4, which is the single-family dwelling exemption for 2444 Cloverfield Boulevard. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Commissioners. Tenants of Unit 1 at 1237 Franklin Street filed a construction decrease petition alleging various impacts from a construction project that involved renovation of Unit 5 on the property. The hearing officer granted them decreases totaling, sorry, is there?
This isn't the appeal, right? We're doing 10A4?
10A4.
Oh, you are doing the single family. My apologies.
We, yeah,
I only did 10A1 to 10.
My apologies.
do we want to hear the staff report for?
Yes, of
okay.
course.
Yeah, okay, so yeah, so we'll do the staff report for
No
10.
problem. My apologies. So this is a single-family home exemption filed by Mr. Aaron Levine, who owns the property at 2444 Cloverfield Boulevard. To qualify, he has to prove that he has lived on the property as his principal residence for at least 2 years. And title records confirm that he is the sole owner and that it's a single-family home. Mr. Levine doesn't own any other property in Los Angeles County. He submitted utility, financial, and government records to show that he's lived on the property for at least 2 consecutive years. And that's also consistent with the voter registrar's record for Mr. Levine. And for those reasons, staff recommends the board permanently exempt this property from the rent control law as a single-family home and adopt the proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Okay. Now we'll move to questions about the staff report. Are there any questions about the staff report? Okay. And we don't, Commissioner Dudek?
Well, I just have a question. I think I can answer it, but I was just curious. I mean, the home was evidently under rent control in 1979 as a rental? Is that
Correct.
correct? And then Mr. Levine purchased it. He's been there for some time. So and he does, it looks like he does meet the criteria under the law for the exemption. I was just curious, if it were ever to be rented again, it would not fall back to rent control, would it?
That's correct. Under the rent control law, they would not fall back. It's been permanently exempted for that reasons.
Yeah, that's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't believe we have any representatives from the petitioner here tonight. So does any commissioner wish to begin deliberation or make a motion?
I make a motion that we,
Commissioner Ambrose is in the queue first. We'll see.
sorry.
That's okay.
Sure. I'm satisfied with the evidence presented, showing that Mr. Levine has satisfied the requirement that he has occupied the property as his principal place of residence for at least 2 consecutive years. Therefore, I make a motion to adopt the proposed findings of facts and conclusions of law and grant the exemption at 2444 Cloverfield in Santa Monica.
Vice Chair Ivanov?
Second that.
Okay. We have the motion from Commissioner Ambrose and seconded by Vice Chair Ivanov. If there's no further discussion, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Yes.
Commissioner Dudek,
Yes.
Commissioner Leslie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
Chair Gonska.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now moving on to 10B1. Now we'll take that staff report.
All right, start over. Commissioners, the tenants of Unit 1 at 1237 Franklin Street filed this construction decrease petition alleging various impacts from a construction project that involved renovation of Unit 5 on the property. The hearing officer granted them decreases totaling a little over $5,800 for various impacts, including noise. The owner has appealed the decision and argues that the record doesn't support the decreases for the noise impact that were granted for phase one of the project. This project had two separate phases. And the owner argues that phase one of the project lasted only one day, May 31st, 2022, when the project was halted due to a stop work order issued by the city. When the project was, the hearing officer, however, concluded that phase one of the project began back in September 2021 and lasted until the stop work order went into effect on May 31st, 2022, and that the tenant suffered from noise impact from construction throughout this project. The board reviewed this matter as an appellate body, therefore it should affirm the hearing officer's decision if it's supported by substantial evidence, and here substantial evidence supports the hearing officer's finding. Emails from the record show work on the project began as early as September 21, 2021, and that workers were still working on the project on May 31st, 2022, when code enforcement officers were on the property for another matter and observed unpermitted construction activity taking place in Unit 5, which is why the stop work order was issued. The record further includes uncontroverted testimony from the tenants that there was noise from the construction throughout the project, from sledgehammering, breaking of stuccos, and loud noise from the workers who were working throughout the duration of phase one. The cumulative noise impacted the tenant's ability to work from home, requiring him to find other places to conduct his work and have conference calls, and that this work took place at least 3 weeks a month. The hearing officer therefore granted decreases for the noise impact in accordance with the testimony during phase one, excluding weekend and holidays. And because substantial evidence supports this decision and that specific findings, staff recommends the board affirm it.
Thank you. Before we get into deliberation, are there any questions about the staff report? Okay. I believe we do have the representative for the owner here tonight, actually, the owner himself, Donald Klein. So if you'd like to step up to the podium here. And whenever you're ready to begin, you'll have up to 5 minutes to address the board tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for seeing me. Okay, there are dates involved, so it gets a little bit complicated. But I'm here to appeal a portion of the penalties which were assessed on the work done at 1237 Franklin, Unit 5. 5,866, it was assessed in 3 phases, of which all have been paid to the tenant. I am contesting the amount assessed in phase 1 in the amount of $1,565 for dates August 1st, 2021 to May 31st, 2022. The hearing officer alleged that neither party could provide a precise start date of construction, and neither petitioner nor respondent submitted appropriate documentary evidence as to when construction began on this unit. I contend that I alone did submit the documentary evidence to prove when construction began through the more than 50 emails which I submitted between tenant and landlord during this 3 or 4 year period that showed no reference at all to any noise or disturbances experienced from Unit 5. The former tenant had vacated Unit 5 on July 30th, 2021. She had lived in the unit for 30 years, and I contend that during the period in question from September 22nd, 2021 through May 31st, 2022, there was no noise or construction performed in the unit. None of the emails communicated by tenant during this period suggest that any construction was taking place, and I have attached all the emails that were communicated by the tenant to me during this period. In fact, on May 10th, 2022, the tenant filed a petition for decrease in rent because of a defective heater in his unit. The petition made no reference to noise disturbances in Unit 5, and on 11/21/22, his petition was withdrawn because the heater had been restored properly. Prior to May 31st, 2022, I submitted to the hearing officer ample evidence of emails between tenant and landlord. These issues were exclusively confined to problems the tenant was experiencing in his unit, not referencing any issues to Unit 5. I never received any notice that there were any disturbances in Unit 5. What is left out in all these emails to the landlord were any reference associated to noise or other disturbances from Unit 5. No construction was done in this unit during this time period. The only time any worker came into this unit was to clean the unit of debris left by the former long-term tenant. The only email I received during this period from the tenant complained about a worker parking in a non-delegated parking space. However, there are also emails from my office warning tenants, including this tenant, not to park illegally their cars in the space vacated by Unit 5. On May 31st, 2022, I had workers attempt to demolish a kitchen, and I was cited by the city to stop work. This is one day. I completely stopped any work on that unit from that date through February 2024, when I finally secured the proper permits. In summary, no work was done on the unit other than hauling debris and general cleanup from August 1st, 2021 through May 31st, 2022, as confirmed by all the communications and emails sent to me from the tenant. There were no evidence, as you can see attached, of complaints or emails from any tenant, including him, to the landlord regarding noise or disturbances from this unit. Because of COVID, it was very difficult for me to secure a contractor between May 31st and December of 2024. The unit was vacant and quiet for almost 3 years from the time the previous tenant had left. I have agreed to pay all fines assessed from the work actually begun in February of 2024, but feel that there is no documentary evidence from the petitioner other than his verbal words showing any communications of disturbances to me emanating from Unit 5 during the period of Phase 1, September 22, 2021 through May 31st, 2022. As of now, I never saw any documentation to the city or to me describing any allegations of disturbances during the period of Phase 1, which is the only period that I'm really discussing and disturbed by. So I asked the board to reject the assessment of the Phase 1 $1,565 penalty during this period and urge them to observe all the emails that were communicated during that period.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Vice Chair Ivanov?
So the emails that we have, that period, September 2021 through December 2021, that show that the workers are present on the property. So is your contention that they were just doing, as you mentioned, general cleanup and debris?
Completely, because if they had done any noise, this tenant would have called the city immediately, as he had done a number of times in the past.
And when you say general cleanup, like what is that like a routine, or is it, what were they, I guess?
The tenant had been living there for 20 years, and she left a lot of her furniture and junk, and it took a long time, stuff in closets, and to really just take her stuff out and haul it took obviously probably a couple of weeks, at different, maybe a couple of days of hauling, but never to the point of any construction. If we had done any noise or construction, this tenant, who's very vigilant and somewhat malicious toward me, would have, that's when he called the city when I was demolishing kitchens, and it caused some noise. But as I mentioned, a few weeks before this period, he was already calling about his furnace.
But you've answered my question. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'm sorry.
I would just caution the board that you're confined to what's in the record when you review these cases.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time? I didn't hear that.
Your deliberations are confined to what is part of the record. I'm not sure.
The emails that I just referenced, the September 21 through December 21, are in the record.
Okay, so, but eliciting further, like, additional information is not, so, yeah.
Okay, thank you for your comments tonight. I appreciate it. And I believe we do not have a representative for the tenant here tonight. Okay, do we have a request to speak? Would you like to speak? You're not required to, but you can if you'd like to. That's 5 minutes, right? Up to 5 minutes. Okay, so you'd have up to 5 minutes if you'd like to address the board.
Certainly, thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Can you just state your name as well?
Sure, my name is Eric Burke, tenant at 1237 Franklin Street, apartment number 1. I'll keep my comments just to the time frame that Mr. Klein is discussing.
And please just keep it to also what's in the record. That's the only thing we can hear tonight and
I
discuss.
heard that. You got it. No problem. And if it's not in the record, just please tell me and I'll stop, okay? I'll do my best. So in the time frame Mr. Klein is talking about, the city clearly came out and gave a cease and desist order that is not given because they're spraying down the walls with, 409. I helped that tenant move out. There was nothing left in there that belonged to the tenant. There was no furniture, none of that. She wanted her, deposit back, and I don't know if she got it, but. So there was significant construction going on. The place had been, deferred maintenance, if you please, for 30 years. And so it was very dilapidated. I'm sure Don wanted to get a head start on getting repairs done and getting people in there. So there had been significant work. The email showed that. The fact that there was workers parked in our parking spots, I think showed that, yes, there were workers there doing work on apartment number 5, which was loud and noisy. It was unpermitted, which is why the city came and shut it down. I'll stop there unless you have any questions for me.
Okay, thank you for your comments tonight. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Are there any comments or deliberation from the commissioners? Commissioner Leslie?
So approximately how many complaints need to be taken before a code issues a stop order?
It's not necessarily the number of complaints. It apparently what happened in this time is that they were on the property for some other reason, and they noticed the construction, and construction, they determined that it was not permitted construction, and therefore they issued it simply because it was unpermitted construction that they observed. So they were there for a completely different reason.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ambrose?
I just want to say that I think that our packet was very thorough and also really, it laid out exactly what all the claims were, that the tenant, did ask for certain things, and it, whatever evidence was, not persuasive, the tenant did not win on those issues that were raised. I found that a lot of the claims that were made and the ranges that were allowable, that those were reasonable. And when we're talking about what we should be doing, which is to determine whether the hearing officer's decision was reasonable, in my opinion, I think it was. So I won't make a motion yet. I'd like to hear from other commissioners if they have other comments. But in my opinion, I think that the hearings officer's decision was, in fact, reasonable here in this case.
I was trying to piece this together by looking through the record, but something I couldn't seem to figure out was that, I'm trying to find my notes here, that there was a contractor that was hired by the owner who testified, here we go, that when he became involved with the project in late 2023, the Unit 5 had already undergone almost a full demolition. And he later changed his testimony and stated that the unit was still habitable when he began work. and that it had not yet undergone an almost complete demolition. So there's this conflict here between what he initially testified and then later changed it to, but his initial comments were that the unit was almost entirely, had undergone almost a full demolition by late 2023, which would give credence to what the tenant was claiming, that there could have been noise if there was a full demolition going on during that time period, right? So I guess if that part of his testimony was accurate, I think this is a clear cut. It's just a question of if that testimony was then changed later, in my mind. Does anyone else, Commissioner Leslie, I don't know if you're addressing that or something else, but you're in the queue.
I also want to bring it to this board's attention that also on page 12, where they start to state, Mr. Raphael testified that asbestos was found in Unit 5. So the abatement of asbestos takes quite some time. So you can't find that unless the walls were already opened. And if he's saying that there was no construction from 2021 to 2023 or 4, as he just stated, that seems to be conflicting information.
Commissioner Ambrose?
I mean, I think that the staff report, or what is on appeal is phase 1 and 2, but the appellant in his comments was really only discussing phase 1. So the comments about, I guess, asbestos, and then I don't know what, that would be, and Mr. Raphael talking about the project in late 2023.
That would have been phase 2, is what you're saying?
That would also be phase 2 about
okay.
If that matters in your
No, that's helpful,
analysis.
thank you. Okay, I mean, really, it was more of a question I had about the timeline, which that helps to clarify, but even still, I don't see any error that the hearing officer made in that assessment from any of these phases, so I don't see any ability under our authority to overturn the decision. If there's any, no further questions or discussion, does anyone want to make a motion? Commissioner Ambrose?
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion to affirm the hearing officer's decision and findings of fact and conclusions of law in case P2024-00455.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Leslie?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so motion's by Commissioner Ambrose, seconded by Commissioner Leslie. Is there any further discussion? Then may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Yes?
Commissioner Dudek,
Yeah, since we are basically mandated to restrict our decisions to what is in the record, I would have to vote in.
Commissioner Leslie? Yes. Vice Chair Ivanov?
Yes.
Chair Gonska?
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, up next is item 12, administrative items. And first up is 12A, the legislative report by Brian Augusta, our legislative advocate.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Brian Augusta, your legislative advocate up in Sacramento. Pleasure to be before you again here at the end of the legislative session. Wasn't able to get to the prior meeting, so it's a little bit later than usual for you to get my quick summary of what did and didn't happen in the state capitol, but still timely, I hope. As you may be aware, earlier this year, the legislature finished its work and sent to the governor every bill that was going to continue to move this year. And he had several hundred bills on his desk to consider in the 30-day signing period. That That is now concluded, and so we know sort of what became law, what didn't, and what may be moving again next year. We're in the middle of the 2-year session, legislative session, which means that some bills that did not get voted down or otherwise died during the process are still alive. We call those 2-year bills, and some of those bills will continue to move in the second half of the year when the legislature reconvenes in January. So we'll talk a little bit about those. And next year is an election year, so that always provides a bit of distraction and a little bit of a change in sort of the forward motion of the legislature. Excuse me, I'm going to get my water. Sorry, forgive me, I'm getting over a cold, so hopefully that won't be an issue. So just wanted to trace for you a few of the things that didn't happen this year. As I noted in our written report, a number of key bills that we were watching on your behalf stalled during the legislative session, and these are bills that are of, I think, great interest to the board. That includes AB 1248, which we've been talking about in prior appearances, in which the state was, for the first time, really trying to have a definition of rent in state law that would give additional meaning to how we use that term, for example, in the Tenant Protection Act, which caps rents. And one of the problems that has been noted is that increasingly we're seeing landlords sort of unbundling additional charges from rent, charging those separately, which not only potentially increases the rent, but could create some ambiguity about whether those additional charges are covered by the Tenant Protection Act or other limitations on rent increases, but also lacks transparency for tenants when they're leasing up to have additional fees piled on either at lease up that weren't advertised or that are added later in the during the tenancy. And so this bill sought to regulate that. It made it to the assembly floor, but is sitting on the assembly floor, has until the end of January to move forward if it's going to continue to move. Meanwhile, the Attorney General, who is a co-sponsor of that measure, has taken some enforcement actions against companies that are engaging in an illegal use of fees and in ways that violate current law. So it'd be interesting to see how that bill continues to move. Also of note is AB 1157, which the Tenant Protection Act, as you know, caps rent increases in non-rent stabilized units, not locally controlled units. And AB 1157 would lower that rent cap, that statewide rent cap, which currently can be as high as 10% a year, and also expand the coverage to single-family homes, which are generally excluded, and remove the sunset, because in the absence of that, the Tenant Protection Act would expire in 2030. That bill made it out of the Housing Committee, but is in the Assembly Judiciary Committee. It too must clear both houses by the end of January. There's also SB 436 by Senator Wahab, which would extend the time that a tenant has to pay the rent. If they aren't able to pay the rent when it's due, current law says that a landlord can provide a 3-day notice, and if they don't pay the rent within that 3-day notice, proceed to eviction. This would give the tenant 14 days. That bill is also still pending in the Assembly Judiciary Committee, where it was put up for a vote and failed, but can be reconsidered later in the year. So it gives you a feel like some of the major tenant legislation stalled early in the process this year. But other bills are continuing to move, or did move forward to the governor's desk, and a few that I want to just highlight that he signed. AB 246 responds to the potential that the federal administration might in some way interrupt Social Security benefits such that beneficiaries would not get timely payments. And for many households, that might mean the difference between being able to pay the rent or not. 246 provides a protection against an eviction based on that, which allows the court to stay the eviction until those benefits are restored, and then the tenant has a time period to make whole the landlord on the unpaid rent. AB 1414, which again, the governor signed, does a small part of the larger issue that AB 1248, that the bill regulating fees that I mentioned. It does a tiny bit of that, which is to say that a tenant can opt out of a mandatory internet fee. So increasingly, landlords will have one sort of community-wide agreement to provide internet service, and everyone's obligated to use that. But if you prefer a different provider, you can opt out of that, and you can buy your own internet service or cellular service or satellite service. AB 628, there is an error in the staff report in the description, which I'll explain, but this bill by Assemblymember McKinner seeks to deal with a situation which is apparently common in Los Angeles. The outgrowth of the bill was an article in the LA Times about it being fairly common that landlords don't always provide a refrigerator. And so this bill would require that the landlord provide both a working fridge and a working stove. In the staff report, we erroneously say that it has to be something that was manufactured in the last 10 years. That was in the bill, but that description was outdated. That provision came out. But nonetheless, the bill did get signed with that requirement that a landlord provide both a working fridge and a working stove. A tenant can choose to bring their own fridge, in which case if they do bring their own fridge, then the landlord does not have to maintain the tenant's fridge. But if they choose to get rid of their own fridge and ask the landlord to provide one, then the landlord is required to maintain that. So a fairly notable expansion of the law in that regard. And if it doesn't have a functioning stove and fridge, then the premises could be found to be uninhabitable or substandard. So finally, among the bills that the board took a position on that did move all the way through the process, SB 79, which was discussed a lot locally, the board took an opposed position on. That bill did make it to the governor's desk. He did sign the bill. But among the concerns that the board have, some of those were addressed. In the final version of the bill, there are stronger affordability requirements that ensure that we get, under this bill, a developer, this will require upzoning near transit, which will affect, there are 2 transit stops in Santa Monica that this would apply to, and provides additional incentives and concessions to landlords and density increases that make those sites potentially denser and more attractive for development. The final bill does ensure that we get some affordability, so the developer would have to provide either 7% extremely low, 10% low, or 10% very low, or 13% low income. So 13% of the units would have to be affordable to one of those categories. But most importantly, in addition to protections that ensure that any units that are torn down are replaced with an equal number of units, and that if they're affordable and occupied by low-income households, that they're replaced with units that are affordable to those households. But we also wanted to ensure that it did not further incentivize the loss of rent-stabilized units and Ellising of those units. So the bill does go a little bit further than current law and says that you cannot use SB 79 on any site in which there is or had been rent-stabilized units that were present within the past 7 years, which was an expansion of what the bill had previously said, which was 5, which is more sort of aligned with Ellis. So this provides a little bit more protection or discouragement to targeting rent-stabilized properties as opposed to other properties to which this new law would apply. So the governor signs it. The provisions generally go into effect in July 1 as opposed to January 1st of this year, but it will take effect in January. So we were successful in getting some additional amendments to that, not everything that the board was seeking or that others in the community were seeking, but in the end, the author did agree to some important amendments there. So keeping it somewhat brief tonight, but those are the top lines of what we saw this year in the legislature. as I mentioned, they'll be back in January in an election year, in a budget year where revenues are going up, but we still have some challenges. So, one top issue is how do we continue to expand the supply of affordable housing? There are 2 bills pending that would put a bond before the voters to fund new affordable housing development. That would be, I think, a key feature of next year's discussions around housing affordability throughout the state. So let me pause there and see what questions or comments the board has.
Thank you for that report. First up in the queue is Vice Chair Ivanov.
Hi, Brian. Just a couple of questions. So SB 52, the algorithmic price fixing bill, can you provide any insight or if you have any knowledge of kind of the politics behind or the reasoning behind maybe why this bill failed? Because I feel like this is a policy area that's actually been really getting a lot of momentum across the country, nationally, on the East Coast and in other jurisdictions. So I was pretty surprised to see that the bill died. I was curious if you had any knowledge of kind of the inner workings of.
I think there are a few. I never really know everything that's going on in these situations, but there was obviously strong industry opposition to it because, as you know, there are industry actors like RealPage that their business model is based on this on this business enterprise, and so there was strong resistance from groups that were lobbying against the bill. There were amendments taken that sort of continued to weaken the approach of like what constitutes a violation of what is protected or what is prohibited. And then ultimately it died in the Appropriations Committee. That's sometimes, often, not always, but sometimes a function of, this bill is quietly going to be shelved in the Appropriations Committee, and the author may come back next year. So there's not a public debate about why it died in that committee, but the trend of political resistance to the policy was growing, notwithstanding what you're saying about strong arguments on the other side. I suspect we will continue to see more legislation. There was one bill dealing with this issue that did pass that essentially improves the state version of the state's antitrust law, the Cartwright Act, to provide greater enforcement and an easier to meet standard of what involves collusion in that case. So we will see some maybe additional enforcement, but the chief provisions of 52 did not get enacted, unfortunately.
Thank you. My only other question for now was AB 736 and SB 417, the affordable housing bonds. So I see obviously the amount is the same, both are 10 billion. The language you use is funding a variety of affordable housing programs. Is this basically like just the Assembly version and the Senate version of the same bill, or
they're largely the same? Okay. Yeah. And I think the expectation of most sort of folks who are watching that is that with one bill in each house, eventually there will be some deal that emerges involving leadership and the governor, and it will go into one or both, and they'll sort of be melded into one.
There is a little bit of a difference in terms of the substance of the programs that are to be funded,
yeah,
but the goal is to compromise, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, small differences. The main affordable housing, both bills fund the main affordable housing programs like the MHP, Cerna, and CalHome. But those will be resolved. I do want to say one other thing about that is that in the May revise, the governor, in announcing his May revision of the budget, did for the first time signal support for a bond, but said he wanted a portion of it to go to infrastructure. So part of the discussion as these bills, sort of reemerge next year, how much of that 10 million, if that's billion, if that's what it is focused on housing versus infrastructure. The majority will be housing, but it could be like a 30-70 split. So that will be part of the conversation as well going forward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Dudek?
Yes, regarding AB 897, unlawful squatters, and 448, squatters on residential property. It looks like did they both fail? It says 448 is held by the Senate Appropriations. I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, sorry, both of those do. Generally, if the bill is held in appropriations, it is dead. So a new version could be introduced, but unlikely that bill will move forward. That generally means it's dead. So yes, based on that, and the 897 died in the Public Safety Committee, so neither of those will move forward next year.
They will. I just wondered, just for clarification, when something is held in suspension, what does that exactly mean, and what does a 2-year bill exactly mean?
Sure. So first on the 2-year bill, I mentioned this earlier, but the legislature convenes every 2 years, and when they do so, they do it for 2 years, but they go into recess, which they're in recess right now. A bill that's introduced in the first half, in year 1 of the 2-year session, can take the entire 2 years to move through the process. And so some of the bills I mentioned at the very beginning of my presentation are bills that did not move all the way through in year 1, and so they're still eligible to continue to move. And we call those 2-year bills, meaning they started in year 1, but they're still alive. They didn't die. And some of those, if it got into the second house, so if it started in the Assembly, got to the Senate, and then didn't move forward, they have a lot more time. They have till the end of next year to move. The ones that are still in the original house, they have to move out of their first house by January, and many of those will not. So some of the bills I mentioned at the outset, although they're 2-year bills, will have a difficult time continuing to move. So that's what a 2-year bill is. The suspense file is an element of the appropriations process. And the concept is that every bill that has some significant cost has to go to appropriations. And they hear those bills over several weeks. But if you were to take up each bill as it came through, that would disadvantage bills that came later, because if you've approved bills that now have $10 billion in state costs, then the ones that come later are going to be scrutinized more because we're just adding to the cost. So instead, they hear those bills, but they don't act on them, and they put them on what they call the suspense file, meaning action is suspended on the bill. And then at a date certain, which is usually, the day before the deadline to move bills out of the Appropriations Committee, they take all of those bills up at once and they consider them all in what looks like an auction, where they just say this bill moves forward and this bill does not move forward. It's held. And when that bill gets held, we say it's held on suspense, which, as I was mentioning earlier, means it cannot, in most cases, very rarely, but in most cases, it means that the bill is dead. So that process is very, as anyone will tell you, not particularly transparent. Why a bill gets off suspense and why others don't is not very clear, but that's what's happened to a number of these bills that are noted that way.
Commissioner Ambrose?
Yes, thank you. Can we talk about SB 381, about unbundling the cost of parking from rent and new construction? It says it pertains to, is this the one? Certain counties. Do we know which counties that would pertain to?
So
Lake County.
LA is among them, so that much I know. There's I can't remember, 4 or 5 of the largest counties. That's existing law that was enacted by a bill that Assemblymember Carrillo did 2 or 3 years ago. As I recall, the Wahab bill was seeking to undo that or a portion of that law, so it was making changes to that existing law. It also makes other changes about application screening fees and some other things. That bill too was trying to address, if you recall, at the very beginning, I talked about AB 1248 around a definition of rent and fees. That bill is also trying to address some aspects of that as well. It did not move forward. Some portions of it ended up in another bill that eventually did get signed, but not the provisions that are described there. So that bill is a 2-year bill that's still out there.
So it's not in effect now?
No,
It's
yeah,
like,
if-
you just explained with the.
yeah, if it makes it
two-year
all the
vote.
way through that process, then it would be,
Okay, so there could be changes to it.
yes,
Okay, great. Thank you.
yeah.
Commissioner Leslie?
So can we talk about AB 299 by Gabriel?
Yeah. So AB 299 by Assemblymember Gabriel is a bill that, like a few other bills on the list, grew out of the immediate aftermath of the fires that we experienced down here. And one issue is that a lot of people had to seek short-term housing in either short-term rentals or a hotel or motel as a result of their house being damaged or destroyed. Putting a little bit of context to the bill, the hotel motel industry was sort of advocating for the policy that's in this bill, even though they're not technically the sponsors. And the policy was that under state law, if a resident of a motel stays there more than 28 days, they become a tenant. And so that is an important protection for a lot of low-income people who live in what are former motels but are really now permanent housing for folks. This bill sought for an exemption to that rule because otherwise, in the absence of some exemption, everyone who was seeking short-term accommodations because their house was destroyed would have to move out within 28 days, or the hotel would have to treat them like a tenant. So they wanted an exception so they didn't have to do that, and that's what emerged in 299. There are some protections in there that ensure that folks have knowledge that they are, if they're moving into this place and they stay a long time, they may not have the rights of a tenant if they're coming in because they're, need the housing because of a disaster.
I'm very pleased for this. This is something that I advocated for because the people from Altadena and Palisades were given so many things after they were displaced from the fires. And then to have to move every 28 to 30 days, some places extended it to 30. My question is why, how did they arrive with the 72-hour notice or no notice? Do you have any information on that?
I don't have a lot of detail on that, but I think part of that discussion was providing some additional time for a person to move out if they weren't meeting their requirements of paying the daily rental rate, or were trying to avoid becoming a tenant. So there would be some additional notice, but not as much as state law provides.
So there's also language in there about no notice under certain circumstances. So they could put somebody out without any notice.
Yeah, although those cases are generally probably already covered by laws like trespass and other criminal laws, but the idea was if someone was creating a disturbance or a threat, that they should be able to be removed immediately.
Okay. Can I ask another question? Sure. AB 311, McKenna, this stretched out to a 2-year bill as well?
Yeah. You guys are testing my knowledge of these bills that paused early on in the process, but I'm going to satisfy you. Oh, yeah, this is an interesting one. So the concept, I think, was, we don't want to create disincentives to someone taking in a person who needs immediate shelter because their house was destroyed. But under some leases, it might be a violation of the lease if you brought that person in. This bill, though, or if you brought in their pet. This bill, however, was structured in a way that essentially it was, you could bring in that person if you had the permission of the landlord, which is really sort of a description of how the law works currently. So eventually the member hit pause on that to think about how they wanted to approach that. And then they could also charge additional rent. So it sort of was like, yeah, they can move in, but I'm going to make them a tenant, and they're going to have to go through the screening, and they're going to have to pay the rent.
So I thought that there was an ordinance, an emergency ordinance, that if people were displaced due to the fires, that they didn't have to ask for the landlord's permission.
Right, LA did do that, and maybe other jurisdictions, but, and that, I think, was another sort of critique on this bill, was that unlike the LA ordinance, which would provide you protection. Because often what happens is you bring the person in, then there's a conversation about whether they're permitted, and that might be too late. So you may not want to have that conversation with your landlord. And so the LA thing was trying to protect folks who had done that, but this did not go that far.
I don't, okay. Okay, because I can see where this might be potentially a problem.
Yeah, I think that's why the authors hit pause, but there may be a renewal of the conversation in the next year.
Thank you.
Sure.
I had some questions about SB 79, and one of the things you mentioned in your report was that that there were changes made to some elements around the length of time regarding rent-controlled units in those areas surrounding those eligible transit stops. Can you explain more about what those changes prohibit?
Yeah, well, that particular policy basically says that if the property is 2 or more units, and I'll explain why 2 or more units, and that I should say 2 or more units on the property were subject to local rent control, then, and they either exist or had existed in the prior 7 years, you cannot, the provisions of SB 79 do not apply, so the upzoning does not affect those properties. So that sort of discourages a developer who's looking at potential properties where they might use SB 79 from purchasing, LSing, tearing down, by extending the time period by which they could not use SB 79. So it would have to be 7 years vacant before they could say, hey, we get 79. So that's one issue. The other is that under the existing Housing Crisis Act, SB 330, there are provisions in there where units that are being destroyed to produce new housing, that there are some protections, including replacement, and in some instances, a right to return at the prior rent or provide additional units that are affordable to the households that were displaced. So those provisions were in there, but the prohibition on tearing down rent stabilized units was not, and so that was added later, and then eventually extended to 7 years.
So this is 2 or more, because I think at one point the language was more than 2, right? I think because that was a concern we had. We actually looked into.
Now you're making me doubt myself. I think if it's 2 units, that provision does not apply. If it's more than 2 units, so yes.
More than 2, okay. I wasn't sure how, what ended up happening in the final bill, because that was one of the reasons I think that we discussed here, and we ultimately took a vote to oppose it, was because we looked at units that could be impacted in Santa Monica, controlled units. And you mentioned that there are 2 transit stops within the city limits, but there's a third just outside the city limits where there's the radius that would be impacted could spill into Santa Monica.
Okay, 3.
So within those sort of 3 zones, there were a few dozen, I don't remember the exact number, but more than a couple dozen units that were basically 2 controlled units in the property that could be impacted. So that was one of the reasons that we were opposed to it.
Yes.
But in addition to, so just speaking for myself, the main concerns about potential impacts and displacement of current tenants and the affordability issue that you raised.
Right.
One of the other things that I was personally concerned about was how this could potentially impact support for transit projects in the future. Because you could see that people who, whether they're being genuine about it or not, but even potentially people who would otherwise support transit projects and public transportation could be opposed to new transit projects because those transit projects then could trigger these development issues. And so, there was an article just in October, I believe, about Gladstone's here in Pacific Palisades. That's been the plans to revitalize that, to redevelop it, have come back to the forefront post-COVID, and part of that development that's being talked about is changes to bus stops there. And while I understand that there are specific provisions about what qualifies, what kind of transit stops and bus lanes and things like that would trigger these development changes. There's a lot of concern in Pacific Palisades about that transit stop potentially triggering changes to housing development there. And so just one example, obviously it's outside of Santa Monica, but is there anything you can speak to in terms of conversation you're aware of or elements you're aware of that would be related to concern about public transportation because of SB 70?
I mean, the thing you're talking about with respect to future public opposition to new transit stops or new transit lines because it now brings with it higher density. That was part of the conversation. I think the proponents would say one aspect of that is that there is a provision, which please don't test my recollection of all the ins and outs, that allows the local government to adopt an alternative plan that achieves the same level of density, but in a different manner and in different sites. So that's one answer to the question of, will this discourage future transit support? We'll see how that plays out, but that's one thing. And then on the concern that you're articulating about, what will be the impact for, say, duplexes that are rent stabilized? I think that I'm hopeful that there will be ongoing conversation about that. I think what the proponents were wanting to avoid was an instance in which there's a single family home and then another unit is added. That single family home, once that additional unit is added, could be subject to local rent stabilization policy, but now is sort of off limits to the policy in 79, which is, from the proponent's perspective, we should be upzoning around transit, and single family zoning around transit discourages that, and then this becomes a hiding place where what's essentially a single family home, that site's off limits because it now has one rent stabilized unit. So how we have the conversation around distinguishing that from duplexes, that may be part of an ongoing conversation as the law continues to mature. We'll see.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Leslie, are you still in the queue? Yeah, okay, go for it.
So I was looking at SBS 610 in comparison to AB 311, and I wondered if that was it could be a companion or a conflict. Could they work in tandem one with the other, or?
I'm trying to think if there are provisions of 610 that overlap with 311. I don't think so. That I can think of. The main provision in 610 related to sort of landlord-tenant is about whether or not a landlord has some responsibility to clean up debris that is on the property as a result of the disaster. Because as you may be aware, locally, in some cities, there was an argument that it was the tenant's responsibility. So this bill clarified that that's not the case and set some standards for when the unit can be declared habitable and that the tenant has a right to come back to it. But that's the only provision I can think of that intersects with tenancy. So I don't know if there's other overlap, but I could look at those and get back to you.
Because I saw the language, it says it provides a range of protection, so.
Yeah, that's our shorthand for not giving you all the long details. But what I just recounted to you is probably the thing of most significance to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Dudek?
Thank you. Aside from the bills that will be moving forward in the next session and next year, what are you hearing? What are the trends? Any new trends?
Yeah, that's a great question. I alluded to some of that. I mean, I think we're in an election year. It's Governor Newsom's last year. He's obviously thinking about other offices that he might run for. And in our experience, that does somewhat change a little bit how that conversation in Sacramento goes, where, he's one leg in a three-legged stool that all have to agree for major policy things to move forward. And so will that mean we do a lot of innovative things that put Governor Newsom in the news, or do we do a more cautious agenda that is not subject to as much scrutiny? I think That we'll see, but I think in my experience, election years tend to result in more conservative policymaking, so that's number one. Number two, we have, as I mentioned, a continuing budget deficit, so a lot of times, not only bills that cost money, but also new programs that folks want to focus on to meet needs. We have an affordability crisis. We have a lot of uncertainty about federal policy and its impact in California. And yet we don't have a lot of dollars to spend to try to address some of those concerns. So that's going to be part of the balancing act. And then, as I mentioned, I think, the legislature there is some unfinished business that I talked about at the front end about the Tenant Protection Act, increasing fees, other things that are impacting tenants. Those conversations are going to continue to go on next year, whether there are these bills that exist now, like 1157, or a new bill. But, folks are very focused on how do we make sure that tenants are protected from rent increases? And if we're not going to lower the rent cap in 1157, what other measures are we going to do to ensure affordability? But also, as I mentioned, I think that's going to focus folks on the need to expand funding for affordable housing. Most of our key programs are essentially out of money because we have not been back to the voters in a number of years to ask to approve bonds that help fund those programs. And so, as we talked about earlier, there are 2 bond bills that will help to do that. So I think that's going to be a major focus in the coming year as well. We also have a new incoming speaker, pro tem of the Senate, Senator Lamone, who's replacing Senator McGuire. Senator Lamone is from sort of Ventura County area. So she is coming in on the 17th. That may result in new changes in leadership in the Senate. So both like her majority leader, but also committee assignments. So we'll see some reshuffling there. And a lot of us are waiting to see, how that shakes out to have an understanding of, where the policy direction may go next year. So that's a little bit TBD.
Any other questions tonight? I think we've grilled you pretty sufficiently.
It's thank you for your engagement. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda tonight is the final budget report for fiscal year 2024-2025. May we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. As you mentioned, this item provides the board with the final budget report for fiscal year 24-25. Overall, the agency ended the year in a very strong financial position. Revenues exceeded projections, expenditures came in below budget, and the agency closed the fiscal year with a surplus rather than the deficit originally anticipated. A few highlights from the written report. Total revenue for the year was $6.35 million, about $158,000 more than budgeted. This was largely the result of higher than expected interest earnings and slightly higher registration fee collections. Total operating expenditures were $6.04 million, or approximately $226,000 under budget. Savings were realized across all major categories: salaries and wages, supplies and expenses, and capital outlay. Staffing transitions and periods of partial or unpaid leave contributed to salary savings. In addition, the anticipated election was not needed and professional services costs were lower than projected, resulting in additional savings. The agency made its 8th PERS loan payment of $53,620, reducing the remaining loan balance to about $109,000. As a result, the net revenue of $307,052 has been added to the agency reserves, bringing the total fund balance to approximately $2.09 million at year's end. This report is informational only, and staff is available for any questions.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions about the budget report? Commissioner Ambrose?
Quick question. What is capital outlay?
It could be a number of things. We've had to use capital outlay for our building our computer service system that we now have. Lima, do you have any other historical information on that? Lima's our budget guru, as you know.
The category contains a number of different items. I just lost my page again on it. So it covers building renovation where we didn't spend hardly anything. We always have a reserve, or we've been maintaining a reserve if we needed it for some sort of computer system upgrades. And then it grabs most of all the computer system money. So for our software license renewals, our contribution for the computer purchases, software, and then office equipment, which is mostly the copy machine and any other small items that we need. So all of that is considered capital outlay in the budget world.
Thank you so much. I was just wondering what the definition was, and
Yeah.
thank you. That was very thorough.
Vice Chair Ivanov?
It mentions here that our agency's reserves are just a little over 2 million.
Yep.
I'm forgetting what the exact amount is, but I know that there's like a recommended amount that we're supposed to have in reserves in order to be considered like in a healthy financial place.
Yep.
Are we at or above that level?
We're above that now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you recall what the amount, the minimum I'm thinking of?
It's
it like
typically-
1.5?
It's typically 12 to 15%.
Oh, okay.
Of the operating budget, and usually we look at that number at the beginning of the budget cycle when we prepare the budget to make sure that whatever we're proposing has enough. So
Okay.
we had enough at the end of 24, 25 in order to even go with the budget we had with the deficit. And same thing with 25, 26, that we were within what we needed to do to be.
Great, thank you.
So this is roughly around 30%, it seems like, right? If we're at over 2 million,
I didn't do the math. I just know it's well within.
yeah, it seems like it's well over the recommended percentage, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks. Commissioner Embrys?
About the reserves, looking at the interest earnings, like the 1.7 rate, is that interest based on our reserves?
Interest is both on what's in our reserves as well as during the budget year, money coming in and money going out.
So interest based on the fact that we have reserves and we put it somewhere and it gains interest.
Right, right. The city, we're in with the city's money, so they make investments, so they always give us a number to use for projecting the interest, and they tend to be conservative. We've had some really good years, and we have some years where it wasn't so good. They're pretty stable in where they are at the moment. I feel like a few years ago, there was a little bit of a windfall because they were able to get out of some low earnings and move them into higher earnings because they caught it right at the right time, so.
Awesome, thank you.
I think in regards to like just the operating budget, essentially, you know, if there's a lot of the agency's money is coming in early in the
Right.
fiscal year,
Yeah.
it's not all going out the door right away. It's
Right.
going out throughout that full year, so that money is invested also in
Right.
interest-bearing accounts. And what can you give us just a general overview of sort of within a fiscal year, generally how much of the revenue comes in when?
Well, the bulk of it comes in July and August.
So the beginning of the,
I think by July, August, I think beginning of September, we were over 90% of what we projected. And a lot of the expenses are quarterly, so we don't see a lot of them come out until after that. So that first quarter, it's a lot of money coming in and not as much going out. Salaries, of course, all of that comes out regularly, but other expenses, contracts aren't up yet, service agreements aren't up yet, so they get staggered throughout the year.
okay. Thank you. Commissioner Dudek?
Yes, I just want to thank you and staff for this very strong report and the competency and the efforts that you all made to help make this possible.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. It's always great to have not only just a strong financial position, but such detail and such competence, and being able to we always know that we can. At least I can only speak for myself, but I think my colleagues here would echo that. We know when we get these budget projections that we can trust them because they are so accurate year after year after year. So thank you for that. And I guess on that note, there are a number of. First of all, it's amazing. It's great to see having a surplus, especially more than we anticipated earlier on in this process. I did notice that there were a number of things like interest we talked about that came in higher than projected, things that aren't necessarily structural or aren't necessarily things that will, they might just be one-time things. There were some other things I can't think of on the top of my head now, but that I read through here that were sort of one-time things or unexpected. So are there any structural elements here that you think should be flagged, and this is the same for other staff, anything here that may have resulted in less of a surplus or may have resulted in a deficit if we didn't have these unexpected one-time positive outcomes?
Well, we had some savings in the computer line, for instance, because we haven't been assessed our share for purchasing new computers during the fiscal year. So I was hoping that those numbers would come in. We should have paid for it. We didn't. We'll likely have to absorb it in this current year's budget. So that's one of those examples of unexpected savings that we should have been charged for, but we weren't. Or we couldn't be charged, so we'll get charged for it
Still on the
eventually. It just
horizon.
didn't happen now, so it resulted in some savings. Same with some of the staffing issues, having some of those savings there. You can't count on it because you don't know what's going to happen. In the end, it was beneficial because it added to the savings. So there are a few other categories where we overexpended, so it was fortunate that we had savings in some of these other categories to cover it.
Okay. And then speaking of, looking out ahead, one of the things I wanted to highlight was that this year, in this fiscal year, that it was the 8th of 10 annual PERS loan payments.
Right.
So 2 more of those, and then there'll be another big chunk that won't.
Exactly.
That'll be available for other.
Right, right. So that's $50,000 we don't have to plan to spend. That will stay in the reserves because it wasn't spent.
Okay. Commissioner Ambrose?
Yes. And thank you. I would like to echo the sentiments of Commissioner Dudek in compiling this report and also the work that goes into it for a full year. Some more, I guess, definitions, just for me and I guess others if they require. Looking at the administrative record fees and also application filing fees, can you explain what both of those things are?
Okay. The application filing fees, that's essentially owner-occupied exemption. Filings they have a $100 filing fee.
$100, okay.
So it's pretty much the only really fee that we get for an application, so that's what that is.
Okay.
The administrative records is when a party files a writ, they have to ask for an administrative record, be prepared for it. So they have to pay us in advance of the record being prepared. It's an estimate. Sometimes the estimate is low, sometimes it's high. So sometimes we have to refund money back once the record is prepared, or sometimes they have to add to what they already paid for it.
So we're preparing a record for them, so that's our labor, essentially?
Yeah.
And how much are we charging for that?
Well, it's not straight labor. There's a charge for all the pages that get copied. There's a charge for every page of a transcript. There's a charge for compiling the administrative record. The bulk of it is the printing the pages, and the transcript is really the bulk of it. And there's a breakdown per item that I don't know off the top of my head. So it could vary. If you have a very small record, the fee is going to be lower. If you have something that had 4 all-day hearings and had thousands of documents, then that's going to be a really big record.
Okay. So, also, I'd like to thank you for, I guess, in planning this budget, anticipating, or I guess it would be called being very conservative in our estimation so that we did come out ahead. I guess the only one would have been the filing fees, which was such a small difference, correct? And then also just, miscellaneous, like, who knows?
In the old days when everything was paper, we could count on some revenue coming from that because every time we made a copy for someone as part of a record or miscellaneous things from our files, there was a charge per copy. Now a lot of it is done digitally. A lot of people can get their documents from the portal if they want documents rather than having us come and coming in and printing for them. So it's one of those categories that I'll probably have to just knock down to some bare minimum because we just really haven't been earning anything there at all.
And am I correct that the department is moving towards digitizing things? Is that with like old documents, or is that something that we might see in the future as saving costs?
Well, we do a lot of digitizing now. Everything that's in our document portal are the documents that we're required to maintain that are public records. So those get scanned in or directly imported into the system and are digitized. And then we have a records retention schedule where the paper, if there was paper, can go away. A lot of our hearing files are already just e-files, they're not paper. We are working on a project for scanning all of our old registration forms, which use up 10 filing cabinets worth of documents. And it is our historical archive, so they're very important to us. So we are embarking on digitizing all of that. That'll take a little while to get through, but once that's done, we'll put the paper in storage and destroy it when it's appropriate to destroy.
Perfect. Thanks for that.
Any additional questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Next up, we have item 12C, authorization for annual agency closure in alignment with the city winter closure schedule. May we have a staff report?
Thank you, Chair. Item 12C asks the board to adopt the city's new annual winter closure schedule for the Rent Control Agency Office beginning this year. On October 28, the City Council approved a permanent 2-week winter closure of City Hall during the weeks of Christmas Day and New Year's Day. This policy is part of the city's broader employee wellness and equity initiative and reflects the reduced pace of operations that occurs throughout the city and across the region during that time of year. Historically, the agency is aligned with city office closures. Maintaining that alignment ensures consistency for the public and avoids confusion regarding which facilities are open. Our internal data also show a significant downturn in agency traffic, both walk-ins and phone and email inquiries during the holiday season. Based on this trend and management's operational review, we did not anticipate any detrimental impact on agency operations or service delivery resulting from closing for those 2 weeks. Employees would receive their regular salaries during this closure, and there is no additional fiscal impact beyond normal payroll. And I'm available for any questions.
Only question I have is if with the office closed, if it will be over those couple of weeks, will there be any sort of monitoring of incoming email or voicemail from tenants who may be dealing with things like being like evictions or things where they're really very timely?
What we'll do is on our outgoing message, we'll provide resources on both the email and the phone, so that, and the website will have the information as well. We don't plan on staffing, though, to respond to those inquiries. It's important to note that the actual loss of working days is only 6. There would have been 5 working days plus 2 half-days before Christmas and New Year's, so it's not an enormous amount of time that is a loss in personnel time in the office. So I don't think that, particularly with the downturn, that there's going to be that much volume anyway to return to. But we'll make sure that people are advised of resources, particularly for things like if they're dealing with an eviction notice or something like that.
So would those be resources like in other departments in the city, or, I mean, if other, presumably they're gonna be closed too, right? So it would
Right,
just-
well, not everything.
Not everything.
You know, code will be open, but I'm thinking more in terms of folks who are calling, you know, they've received a 3-day notice or something like that, to make sure that they get referred or have information about outside sources,
Okay,
which is what they would be given anyway.
right,
Yeah.
okay. Commissioner Dudek?
Yes, oop. Wait. I guess I'm on, right? Okay. Well, this is a citywide closure for the holidays. Can you comment on safety, police, and fire?
They'll still be working.
That's what I wanted to hear. I mean, I wanted the public to hear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I don't believe we have any public speakers on this item. Any commissioners would wish to begin deliberation or make a motion?
Wasn't there something else you have, Dee?
This is just
Oh, I'm
this is just
sorry.
on this item.
Oh,
Yeah, there's
sorry,
still a few
sorry.
more agenda items after. Vice Chair Ivanov?
I would move that we authorize the annual agency office closure to align with the city winter closure schedule.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chair Ivanov and seconded by Commissioner Dudek. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Yes.
Commissioner Leslie.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Dudek.
Yes.
We got Commissioner Leslie, Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
and Chair Gonska.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay. Next up is item 12D, authorization for full employer coverage of medical premiums for represented and non-represented staff. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Item 12D requests the board's authorization to implement the same medical insurance changes recently adopted for city employees. On October 28th, the City Council approved an amendment to its umbrella agreement with the Coalition of Santa Monica City Employees. Beginning January 1, 2026, the city will pay 100% of the medical insurance premium for eligible employees. Employee contributions, currently 8%, will be eliminated. The city also approved a one-time $100 wellness bonus. Historically, agency staff have received medical insurance benefits in parity with city staff. Extending full premium coverage to agency employees maintains that longstanding practice and avoids having two different contribution structures for city and agency personnel. Staff is not requesting adoption of the one-time $100 wellness bonus. That provision was negotiated specifically as part of the city's 2025 labor agreements and does not have a comparable precedent within the agency's compensation framework. The fiscal impact for the remainder of fiscal year 25-26 is $21,654, which will be incorporated into the mid-year budget update. I'm available for any questions.
So I believe the current fiscal year operating budget, there was, at least initially, there was a anticipated deficit of approximately $253,000 for the full year. And then this would add $21,000. So is there anything you can speak to in terms of where we're actually at with this fiscal year in terms of not adding to a deficit?
No, I can't speak to that at this point. There'll probably be some savings, and Lima Bill, she's nodding that there'll probably be some savings because we're still seeing some of the leave issues, some of the backfill issues. So it's hard to say. I can't say with certainty. I don't see anything that would cause me any pause to absorb this additional roughly $20,000 into the existing fiscal year.
Okay. Commissioner Ambrose?
I know that the 100 wellness bonus is not an established practice, or there's no precedent within this agency, but since it was mentioned in this report, can we discuss or talk about, or can it be explained what this $100 employee wellness bonus is?
My understanding is that it's just $100 that's going to be given to city employees once a year to do it as they see fit.
And like anyone gets it, or they always get it, it's just $100, and it's called a wellness bonus.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, one more question. What's the total staff that we have in our agency?
We have 23 FTEs working in the agency.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? We don't have any public speakers on this item, so we can begin deliberation or entertain a motion. Vice Chair Ivanov?
I move that we authorize full employer coverage of medical premiums for represented and non-represented staff.
Do we have a second?
I'd like to make a substitute motion.
Okay.
I'd like to authorize what what was the original motion? Just
To approve what the staff recommendation is, and that in the staff report, which is for the agency to cover 100% of the medical insurance premiums, aligning it with the city.
Yeah, I would like to agree to that with the substitute motion of adding the $100 employee wellness bonus, given, if others would agree, given that $100 with 23 staff members is only 2,000. What's the math on that?
You're right.
2,000. Yeah, it's 2,300. I mean, I understand there's no precedence there, but if the point is parity, and also, I'm sorry, what was our last agenda item? Was about approving, we had just approved, time off during the winter break, and I believe in work-life balance and labor rights, and I think it's important also to align, even at minimum, with our city agreements. I think it's my personal opinion that the $100 wellness bonus is something I would like to add, if others are amenable.
Yeah, I intended to include everything, but I appreciate you clarifying, the clarification. So we can go with the substitute motion.
Are we on discussion right now?
Well, first we would need a second. Do we have a second on that substitute motion? I have a question. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think it is seconded because apparently.
Oh, were you seconding the substitute motion? Or you were saying, you were clarifying that?
Well, no, because the substitute motion takes precedence, right? So, if you're gonna bring a substitute motion, I would just. If you're gonna bring a substitute motion, I would just clarify that the substitute motion is to authorize the full coverage of the medical premiums and the $100 wellness bonus, not just the wellness bonus alone, just so we make sure that we're comprehensively included. And that's what I intended to do originally, but I appreciate you clarifying that piece.
Yeah, I think that was what you did state, that you wanted to, the motion was for the staff recommendation for the 100% coverage, and then also to add the $100 wellness.
That's right, I can say it more clearly.
But do we need a substitute motion if the original motion maker is clarifying that was his intention with the original motion?
You don't, just make sure, I mean, now that there's a substitute motion on the table, it's probably cleaner just to get a second to that substitute motion.
Are we on discussion after that?
After that, we will be, once we get a second.
So who's the second? Yeah.
Well, I have a question first on that. Is there, because I'd be willing to second it, but the only question I have is, are there any sort of operational issues with doing that if we were to authorize it tonight?
So if you want to discuss it, there needs to be a second, and then you can discuss it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have a second? I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay, so now we'll move to discussion. Commissioner Dudek, do you want to ask a question?
Well, yeah, I'd like to hear from our general counsel also, but my question is that if we approve this, then we set a precedent, right? And if they do it every year, we have to, would we be setting a precedent that we have to do it? And if it goes up in cost, or we?
Well, no, if you adopt the 100 now, I don't, you'd be adopting what the city's doing. So what the city's doing is offering that every year. So you'd be adopting that. That would become part of the bonus structure for staff at the agency. If the city did something different, you would have to approve that separately.
Okay. And
Looked in every year.
Yeah, locked in at 100.
so I believe you asked a question. I was very interested to hear the answer, Commissioner Gonska.
Yeah, so, yeah, my question is to restate is, are there any concerns you have, not from a budget, not from a dollar amount perspective, but just from an operational standpoint?
Well, the reason that staff wasn't recommending that component is that one of the reasons for it is that the city bargaining units, my understanding is they did not feel that the negotiations were favorable to them during the 25 negotiation season. I don't think that we have that issue in our agency. You approve the MOUs with the staff, with the various bargaining units. There was in fact, there's a bonus structure in those agreements. This isn't to take anything away from staff. It's just that we negotiated in good faith, and they negotiated in good faith an agreement that included this kind of benefit already. If they want to raise it in the next negotiation sessions that'll occur in 2028, we can talk about it then. If the board wants to go forward with it now, then that's the direction that you want to go in. That's what'll happen. But there was a specific reason for not recommending it, because the same kind of issues that arose between management and labor in the city were not issues for the agency.
So am I hearing some concern about sort of providing additional benefits that are not part of the labor negotiations?
Yeah,
Precedent?
Yeah, I think that since the reason behind it being something that the new city management brought forward or was negotiated with labor, and I'm not sure of the exact details, is because of a feeling that those negotiations ended on a bit of a sour note. And this is a way of making up for that. Whereas at the agency, I don't think that exists. I think we can negotiate further benefits at the next negotiation season, which again is coming up in 28. So it's not to detract from staff. It's not saying that, there's not good reason for you to feel this way, but it's just not something that's been part of our precedent to always adopt everything that the city does with respect to its own negotiations with its unions. And, but when it comes to the insurance premiums, that has precedent. We've always linked ourselves to that umbrella agreement. And in fact, when the city wanted to go to the 8% contribution, the agency did the same. So, and at that time, we might not have even had the same fiscal reasons for doing it, but it's both to maintain parity and also to stay, linked with the city's administrative procedures. There's also like a technical and a logistical reason for it, because with the $100 bonus, we don't need to do that to keep the systems that the city uses functioning for the agency. But when it comes to the insurance issue, if we start to do something different, it becomes problematic.
Okay. Commissioner Dudek, are you still in the queue, or were those all of your questions for now?
I think our director answered the question very thoroughly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ambrose?
Yes. Okay, so I have a few questions. I understand now how this ties into our negotiations with our, what am I thinking of? What's the word?
The bargaining.
Yeah, bargaining units. And that $100 split between 23 is a lot different than, however many city employees there are. And that, negotiations can be very different. I guess a question of mine, I don't know why it's called employee wellness. Is there anything you can think of that we have that's called something like that?
We don't have a specific employee wellness, but we have bonus structures, tuition reimbursements. Like I said, our contract negotiations were held in good faith on both sides, and I think that there's a general sense of achievement and accomplishment with what everyone agreed to. And that to kind of insert new bonuses, just because the city's doing it, it sort of takes us out of our own negotiation posture that we are accustomed to and should be following, in my opinion.
Okay, that kind of, I know I'm the one who made the substitute, but now I'm starting to wonder if all of us should maybe have a little more, I don't even know what questions we should be asking or thinking about, but I need a little more pause on this
Okay, well,
before having like the voice vote.
Can I make a recommendation? I mean, what you could also do is accept the executive director's recommendation, following the normal course of our negotiations. When it comes up again, something like this can be raised at that time. But at this point, we just need to make sure the insurance can go through.
Yeah.
Vice Chair Ivanov.
So this is a one-time bonus. This is not an annual, like $100 every year. This is a one-time payment.
It's been explained to me as a annual $100 bonus. And I know that I was confused by the language too, and I specifically asked HR what it's going to be, and they told me that it's going to be an annual bonus.
What they had to do is reopen their negotiations. That's not what we're doing here. So I want to be really clear that the city had to do something very kind of radical that we are not doing.
Okay, because I mean, to your point, that's kind of different from what we have in our, it says would not apply to agencies, the one-time $100 wellness bonus.
Yeah,
So,
let's say one time.
Okay. Okay, that clarifies some things.
Can I be back in the queue?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most important thing, like it was stated, is the insurance. I think it's important and timely now because of what's going on with instability in the federal government. We're in uncertain times with our economy and how the broader insurance corporations and the costs will change and react. So I think this is very timely and important, and I'm very glad that this was brought to our attention. I think that I've now, I guess, changed my mind in thinking that we should adopt what staff has recommended in authorizing our executive director to take the actions to extend to our agency in covering the same 100% medical insurance premium and excluding the employee wellness bonus, but that it's definitely something that that as a board can be thinking about at a later time when we discuss labor negotiations.
Okay, so we have the substitute motion on the floor, so do we need to?
I withdraw it.
She can withdraw it, okay. So you withdrew it, so now we're back to the original motion, which, do you want to just restate it? Because
I'll withdraw. I thought
She withdrew the substitute motion, so we still have your original motion on
We
the.
need someone to restate original motion.
she just made a motion with what she just said.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
But is it,
Wait, there's one on the floor already, right?
That's okay. No, make the motion now. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll make the motion that we authorize our executive director to take any necessary actions to enter into agreements and to extend to our rent control agency to, hold on, how am I saying this? To enter into the same agreements to provide 100% medical insurance premium coverage to our employees and to exclude the $100 employee wellness bonus.
okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, and may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Yes.
Commissioner Dudek,
Yes.
Commissioner Leslie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
Chair Gonska.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay. Okay, now we will adjourn this regular meeting of the Santa Monica Rent Control Board and reconvene into our special meeting. Okay, so I'll now call to order the special meeting of the Santa Monica Rent Control Board. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Present.
Commissioner Dudek,
Present?
Commissioner Leslie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
Chair Gonska.
Here. Okay, so we have item 12A. It's a request for a confirmation of Veterans Day as a paid agency holiday. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The city recently approved new MOUs adding Veterans Day as a paid holiday for city employees starting in 2025. City Hall will close annually in observance of the holiday. Historically, the agency has aligned its holiday schedule with that of the city. Extending recognition of Veterans Day as a paid agency holiday maintains that alignment, avoids public confusion, and ensures parity for agency employees. There is no fiscal impact beyond regular payroll costs, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions? Vice Chair Ivanov?
So is there not a similar concern here with the wellness bonus where there's like certain holidays that are agreed to as part of labor negotiations where you're now inserting a new holiday that wasn't agreed to in the negotiations?
This one is more of a technical fix because there is a provision in the existing MOUs and contracts that calls for days like this one to be off for our employees. But the way it's phrased doesn't quite work because that requires that the city council declare it a public holiday. And they didn't actually do that. They just agreed to it as an insertion in those MOUs. But the effect is the same.
Okay.
It's recognized as a holiday, City Hall is closed, no cleaning staff, no counters open. So, in fact, the reason it's a special meeting is because I got told at the last minute that we needed to fix this in order for it to apply for this pay
So
period.
there's no concern that this would negatively impact our bargaining leverage or negotiation?
Not at all, no.
Thanks.
Okay, we don't have any public speakers on this item. Does any commissioner wish to make a motion?
I'll make a,
Commissioner Dudek?
yes. I make a motion that we confirm Veterans Day as a recognized paid holiday for the rent control agency employees each calendar year beginning in 2025, consistent with the city holiday schedule and city hall operations.
I'll second that. And may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Commissioner Ambrose,
Yes.
Commissioner Dudek,
Yes.
Commissioner Leslie,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ivanov,
Yes.
Chair Gonska.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, and that concludes the agenda for the special meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting to the next regular meeting of the Santa Monica Rent Control Board on December 11th, 2025?
I so move.
Do we have a second? I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, meeting is adjourned.